Creed, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMALOTN, joined as always by my guy John. You can find him at MMA Fox on Twitter, and we are here propping you up for UFC Vegas 37. We had 1 week off. Me and John were just talking about it. We feel as though it's been forever since we've seen some fights. So we had to shake off some rust this week. Finally happy to get some fights. We did lose one just less than an hour ago. So we only have 14 fights, but still 14 fights it is. John, first of all, obviously you're stoked about the fights coming back this weekend. Which fight are you most excited about this weekend, though? Let's give that. Name value wise, there isn't much to look forward to here. But something that a lot of the past fight nights have shown us is we don't need name value to have entertaining fights. So which fight do you think is going to be the one that kind of jumps off the page here?
Man, I was not ready for that question. I don't know. It's funny because I kind of touched on it, yesterday a bit. Like you said, name value wise, it's not great, but I actually think a lot of these fights are going to end up being pretty exciting, even if they aren't the highest level. In terms of what I'm most looking forward to, I guess it would probably be Mike Rodriguez and Tafon, especially because I have an angle on that fight that I think is pretty strong. And in general, I think it's going to be a stand-up fight where the guys, throw some heavy leather in there. There's a lot of good fights on paper here. Smith Spann is going to be a mess, but should be fun, right? So a lot of fights like that.
It was weird. I saw a statistic today. It said that 80% of Anthony Smith's light heavyweight fights have been a main event, which is absolutely crazy considering his run at middleweight, right? And now he's kind of had a bit of a resurgence. It's weird, like these light heavyweight guys have these resurgences. Anthony Smith, Jan Blachowicz, obviously champion now. Even Andrei Arlovski, I know he's not a light heavyweight, but heavyweight. Like I remember 10, 11, 12 years ago, everybody's like, oh, he's chin shot. Just let's just call it a career. And then he's like a fight or two away from a fucking title shot 6 years later. So we'll see if Smith can, get back on the winning track here. Obviously, we'll break it down for you guys later on. Before we actually kick things off, always as a reminder, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe. And then we have the Club and Sub YouTube channel linked in the description below. So make sure you guys go out there and show my guy John some love as well with his circus of guys that he has over there on Wednesday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. They're breaking down the card in full. That's always a show that I like tuning into as well, too. All right, let's not waste too much more time. Let's fucking get into this fucking card. First off, we got Emily Whitmire going up against Hannah Goldy. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 125 now on Emily Whitmire. It seems like she's been taking some action over the last 24 hours or so. Plus 105 is the return here on Hannah Goldy. Weird fight, right? You got Hannah Goldy stepping in on pretty short notice. Obviously, she had a lengthy layoff before her last fight where she got pieced up by Diana Belbita for the majority of 15 minutes. And it seemed like the only amount of success she really had in that fight was like the last 20 seconds where she finally decided to grapple, take Diana Belbita down, immediately gets to full mount, and then starts raining down shots, but too little too late at that spot. Emily Whitmire, she is a bit of a spitfire, just like her nickname, right? She goes out there and she throws caution to the wind. Sometimes she goes out there and submits Alexandra Albu within a minute, or she goes out there and gets submitted in a minute and a half by Poliana Viena. There are decent performances on her record, like the Jamie Moyle one way back from UFC 226 when she was able to go out there and just kind of piece up Hannah Goldy from distance. Jamie Moyle from distance. And it's just interesting because Moyle and Goldy almost have a similar stature outside of the actual ripness, right? They're kind of shorter, stockier opponents. Jamie Moyle more of a wrestler than anything. So I don't, I think that we'll see Hannah Goldy have a little bit more success than what Jamie Moyle did. But the one thing that I found interesting is I'm seeing Hannah Goldy training a lot with Marina Shafir, obviously a former standout, judo standout from the Olympics, was meant to be seen as the next Ronda Rousey, if you guys remember back then. And even Jillian Robertson, that makes you believe that she's going out there and trying to test her grappling, maybe try to use that in this fight against Emily Whitmire. But even if it does go out as a regular Hannah Goldy fight, I'm expecting that, distance striking, stay at range, light striking here and there. Emily Whitmire just has not been active enough for me recently. Obviously, Hannah Goldy as well, but I'm just not a big fan of what Whitmire brings to the table. I feel her best path is getting to the ground and finding submission here. Otherwise, she's probably just going to get lit up, not lit up, but touched up from the outside over 15 minutes here by Goldy. So I'm actually on the Goldy side. No real conviction in terms of props. Goldy by decision at plus 205. I think that's probably the spot you got to take here if you're going to take anything at all. I'd be surprised if Goldy finishes Whitmire. She's not much of a finisher, even though she looks like a finisher, but she's definitely not. And then Whitmire, if you're looking to back that, I think taking her by sub is probably the best way to go about it. Do we deviate at all here in terms of our opinions on this matchup?
Oh, we deviate quite a bit here, actually. I actually took a bet on Goldy here at about minus 120. Are or not Goldy, sorry, Whitmire.
Yeah, Mike, you got torched on that line movement, then, brother.
Yeah, I guess. Look, I'm not going to try to make the case for why Whitmire is good. What I do think is she's being a bit underrated here. I see a lot of takes about how bad Whitmire is, and I'm not trying to make the case that she's a great fighter, but I do think kind of contextualizing what she's done in the UFC is important. If you look at who she's lost to, she got armbarred by Biana, who has an excellent guard. She lost to Amanda Hebas. I don't think anybody's really getting upset about that. And she lost to Jillian Robertson. Other than that, she fought Jamie Moyle, who I personally would put higher as a striker than Hannah Goldy in a fight that was primarily a striking fight, right? And then she obviously submitted Alexandra Albu. Look, I'm not saying I think Whitmire dumpsters Goldy on the feet, but I think it's going to be fairly competitive on the feet. I think it's maybe 50-50-ish. I even slightly lean Whitmire just because, like I said, I just kind of trust the level of competition she's fought more. Look, Belbita's aggressive, but Goldy getting her brains battered in like that by Belbita was pretty worrying to me. Also, that fight was 2 months ago. It was very, very recent.
Not even.
Yeah, and she took some serious damage in that fight, So it's she's coming back here on that turnaround. Not that I think Whitmire would knock her out, but even if I call the striking even, I do think there's a somewhat pronounced grappling advantage for Whitmire in this fight. And so with that being the case, I think Whitmire has some submission upside here. And I just think all the grappling upside is on her side personally. And so I capped Whitmire around 60%. So I bet her here. In terms of a prop, I'm not in love with anything, kind of like you. I thought, maybe doesn't go the distance. If you could get plus 230 is kind of interesting because, Whitmire has been a bit fragile in the past, and certainly, the submission path is there. So I think that's kind of tempting, but just in general, I like Whitmire. Nothing really I would advocate to bet on, to be honest.
Yeah, it feels like one of those fights where if you feel like you have a little bit of an edge, you might as well take advantage of it. I don't see it. I know that you see it over there with the Whitmire side of things, and Goldy is obviously not the greatest fighter either. So if you can find that edge, which I believe you did, I think you're in good hands here. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. This one I'm interested to hear your thoughts on. We got Gustavo Lopez going up against Haile Alateng. In terms of odds, we got minus 130-ish now for Haile Alateng and plus 110 on Gustavo Lopez. Alateng famously going down to fight ready now, obviously trying to change up his game, has a decent wrestling background, just like Gustavo Lopez, who's, in my opinion, his wrestling is a little bit underrated. I believe he did wrestle over there in Washington, if I'm not mistaken, has a decent wrestling background, does it show it in his fights in terms of good up fight IQ, in terms of mixing in the grappling and the wrestling behind striking combinations. But my qualm with him is his striking, right? It's a little bit too wild, a little bit too loopy. He's kind of content with just throwing big shots out there, not really trying to set anything up. And I feel like a guy like Haile Alateng, who's shown better striking, in my opinion, will be able to kind of cut him off with those straighter, crisper strikes down the middle. I think the wrestling is going to nullify each other. I think we're going to see a striking battle for the most part. And if that's the case, I got to lean the Haile Alateng side here. I got to believe he's been making improvements over there at Fight Ready. But even before going to Fight Ready, I was impressed with the striking, especially with the wrestling background that he has, so that he can, maybe sprawl and brawl or whatever he needs to do in those situations, as I feel like he's going to have to do here. I will be very impressed and surprised if anybody has significant grappling success in this fight. I think it should be a striking battle for the most part here. So I'm going to go Haile Alateng. I think Lopez is quite durable. I know we saw Yanez get him out of there the last time around. However, I don't think that Alateng has that crazy Yanez technique and power. I think he has good striking. I just don't know if he has that finishing capability here against a guy that I believe is quite durable in Lopez. So in terms of odds, I'm going with the overs here. Over 2.5 minus 200, a little bit juice, but I do think we see that hit. And then Alateng via decision plus 165. That's kind of my favorite prop on this one. How do you see this one going down, brother?
Yeah, it's a weird fight that I've been kind of waffling on whether to bet Alateng on all week. I do like Alateng here. I guess my problem with Alateng is really that, he's not a good round winner. He will wrestle people, but kind of to your point, while I think he could have some wrestling success here, I think I'm a bit more bullish on it than you are. I don't think that success is maybe 2 or 3 takedowns on the high side where he probably doesn't get much control. So again, it's not totally meaningful wrestling. And on the feet, look, I favor Alateng, but his work rate is so low. And look, Lopez's is too. But if you get a fight like that where you have 2 strikers, neither of whom is a great striker, I edge Alateng and I edge him on power here as well. But like the margins are fairly thin there. You know, even though I favor Alateng wherever the fight goes personally here, I don't think he banks, rounds very easily. But with all that said, I do think he is the side here. Like, I think he is the better fighter. Kind of to your point, Elok, like, I don't hate Lopez. He's a decently well-rounded fighter. The problem is, I say well-rounded as in he's not very good at anything, but he's not really bad at anything either, His striking is a bit sloppy, and he is very hittable. But, Alateng, again, not really the guy that usually takes advantage of that stuff because he is so low paced. But at the same time, he's fought superior competition. He's beaten superior competition. I do think he's a bit more technical. And I think if anybody's got grappling upside, it's him. So I lean him. But I do sort of agree with you in terms of the fight ending. Like Alateng himself, we know is stupid durable just because, we saw the Casey Kenny fight. He took an absolute beating in that fight and just never even was close to going away. And then, on the other side, Lopez basically got hurt badly at the start of round 2 by Inez and then just got clipped clean coming in. Could that happen here? I guess, but I don't think Alateng is the counter. Well, I know he's not the counter striker that Adrian Inez is. I shouldn't say I don't think. And so, someone could finish. But more than anything, I also like the Alateng decision. I actually like, it's a little juicy. I think it's about, minus 170 I'm seeing in spots, minus 185. I also like fight goes to decision, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, again, I'd be surprised if either guy gets some crazy success or has significant success with the grappling, which would lead to a finish or even able to muster up a knockout punch in here. So, I'm definitely with the overs and the decision prop on either side, but more so on the Alateng side than anything. All right, let's move on. To the next fight here, we got Impa Kasanganay going up against Carlson Harris, and I believe I could be off, but I feel as though this was the fight that saw the most line movement throughout fight week. We saw Impa Kasanganay open up as a minus 185 favorite, bet all the way down now to minus 115. Carlson Harris, 34 years old, seems to have a decent grappling background, or at least a knack for going out there and trying to grapple fuck his opponents, whether it's a 5-round decision against Carl Booth, pushing him up against the cage, or being able to find the submission relatively quickly in some of the other fights that we've seen. Obviously, he had that club and sub in his UFC debut against Christian Aguilera. So that was obviously a very successful debut for him. But I find that he might have his work cut out for him here in the spot against Impa Kasanganay. Now, I don't think that Kasanganay should have been a minus 185 to begin with, right? I think that line was a little bit too wide. We got to give Harris a little bit more credence than that. The guy has some good power in his hands. He can definitely go out there and club and sub his opponents. I'm talking about Harris here. And it's definitely a little bit of a threat to Impa Kasanganay, who we still got to worry about a little bit of his durability, right? Let's be honest. I feel as though Harris, being the same size as this guy, could potentially clip him with something and put him down and follow up with some grapple success after that, or grappling success after that. However, I still come to the conclusion that I feel like Impa Kasanganay is the better fighter, right? More technically sound in terms of his striking, has decent understanding of range. Obviously, getting a lot more comfortable down there at Sanford MMA is obviously a very good thing for him. And then his grappling, he showed it off in the Sasha Palatnikov fight last time around. Obviously, we've seen several fights in the past. So I feel like his grappling is going to be serviceable enough for him to stay out of any big trouble here from Carlson Harris. Maybe not get wrapped up on a Kono choke. Maybe a club and sub situation for Harris is obviously live, but I do still end up siding with the Impa Kasanganay side here. I don't see him getting a finish though, right? He's not much of a finisher outside of that Palatnikov fight, and I doubt he's going to have as much grappling success against Harris than he did against Palatnikov. So I'm going to go with the decision here. Once again, Kasanganay by decision plus 175. I know I've started off with nothing but decisions at the beginning of this card, but I promise you, I feel like there's a ton of violence still to be had on the rest of the card. I just feel like the card might start off slow here with a couple of decisions. Do you agree with me on that side, or how do you feel like this one's going to go down?
I think it's a weird fight, to be completely honest with you. I almost bet Impa, and ultimately I passed it, primarily because I think this fight comes down to really one question, and that's really, what is Impa's defensive grappling like? I thought it looked okay against, I think it was Kalen Williams at Contenders, but, Kalen Williams is kind of meaningless. And a couple fights prior to that regionally, he looked pretty bad on bottom. And so now look, he's very, very young, and I expect he's going to be improving fight to fight. And I would expect he has improved from this time to now, like 3 years ago. But we don't know, right? And, we do know when Harris gets on top, he is dangerous. He's a threat to finish. He's a threat to hold you down. And he's going to try to grapple you a lot. And so without having that answer to that question, it's hard for me to play Kasanganay here. On the other side, though, I don't have really any interest in betting Harris. I personally think Harris's wrestling is dramatically overrated. I give him credit. He has a very good top game, and I give him credit for being a willing wrestler and being very processed. But, if you actually watch the guy, he almost never takes down anybody with anything but a body lock. When he tries to shoot at legs, he doesn't really set takedowns up very well at all, and he doesn't chain anything together. And for me, the issue is he's excellent from the body lock. The problem is when you get hit a certain level, guys who know how to pummel for underhooks aren't going to be getting taken down very much by body lock takedowns, or even you allowing to get the body lock too much. And so his upside in the UFC for me is very capped because of that. And I think on the feet, look, Harris has some power, but I think Impa just pretty much owns him there, to be completely honest. And so when I look at it, it's like, I think both guys have potentially hindsight dominant, being hindsight huge favorites here. I kind of lean more towards Impa just because I kind of think his margin for error might be a little wider than Harris's here. Harris, obviously, even if it is true Impa's bad on bottom, I don't trust Harris to get the fight down, because of that issue with how he approaches takedowns. And so I lean Impa. In terms of what I like prop-wise, I do think when looking at it, it's like if Harris wins, it's likely predicated on him being able to dominate Impa on the ground. And if that's the case, he's probably finishing. And on the other side, I don't think Impa's a great finisher, but I do think he's going to touch Harris up a lot if he stays standing. And so, I kind of like the under here. It's plus 125. I don't think that's a bad number. That would probably be my stab, under 2.5.
Interesting. I'm curious about what intrigues you about Kasanganay's finishing ability here, right? He's not much of a finisher. It's more so going off of Harris's, lack of striking defense, lack of striking
pretty well. I think Impa's got fairly reliable output, and I think Harris is going to have to work at a pretty high pace too, to win this fight, even if he's not getting takedowns. And so I kind of think Harris fairly likely to slow down. Plus, again, I agree with you. I don't think Impa has a ton of finishing upside, but at 170 pounds, when you punch a guy in the face enough times, you just never know if they're going to wilt. Yeah. And we haven't really seen Harris get into that yet. And so I don't know. I think it's an interesting angle on it. I don't hate I get the logic behind Impa decision. I just, I think it kind of covers what is likely Harris's most likely paths to victory by betting the under there.
Perfect. All right. I don't mind that explanation. I'll take it. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. A long-awaited UFC debut for Erin Blanchfield, who steps in and fights Sarah Alpar. If you guys remember, Erin Blanchfield was actually stepping in to fight Norma Dumont a couple months ago, and Dumont just absolutely obliterated the scale. The fight gets canceled, and Erin Blanchfield's debut gets pushed back. Now here she is fighting at 125 pounds, where she should have been the entire time, compared to her making her initial debut at 135 pounds, but coming down to 125 pounds, this is probably where she needs to be the entire time. And I couldn't think of a better stylistic matchup for her here to make her debut, hence why she's a minus 400 favorite. Opened up at minus 180 on Bet Online and got immediately steamed down to the minus 300s. Now she's sitting in the minus 400 range. However, with all the hype and all that shit, 22 years old, I'm not paying minus 400 for this woman yet. I want to see a little bit more from her before I actually, put my hard-earned money on this woman. Now, she should go out there and cruise, right? I think that's Sarah Alpar's only real, maybe not advantage, but strength in this fight is wrestling, right? That she has a bit of a wrestling background. She can use that to her advantage. We've seen it in the past. Her fight against Jocelyn Edwards, very close fight. It seemed like control versus damage, but judges ended up going with control that night. And then we've seen her struggle in the past where, if she can't get her opponent down, she gets absolutely butchered on the feet. Now, Erin Blanchfield, mainly a grappler, but she is getting better with her striking as she's been showing off in her last couple fights. Obviously, decapitating Victoria Leonardo 2 fights ago in the second round with a beautiful head kick. And then lastly, having a complete performance against Brogan Walker-Sanchez with striking and takedowns. And I feel like if she follows that similar game plan here against Sarah Alpar, she'll have dramatic success. Now, I was kind of hoping for better inside the distance numbers on Erin Blanchfield, as I feel that if she is able to stuff some takedowns, she should be able to really hurt Sarah Alpar on the feet. I don't believe in Alpar's striking whatsoever, but it's just not wide enough for me, right? The last time I checked, the inside the distance is plus 285. I want a little bit more than that. I'm being a little bit greedy. So in terms of the props here, pretty straightforward. Blanchfield should go out there and pretty much cruise throughout this fight. Blanchfield by decision plus 120. That's probably the best way to play here. Say what you want about Alpar. She is a little bit tough, but I don't know if Blanchfield's striking is that far ahead enough now that she's going to go out there and start finishing chicks at a higher clip than that plus 285 indicates. So, Blanchfield, very much looking forward to any contrarian take you have here, Mr. Contrarian Fox over there. How do you see this fight going down?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to be unwell to lay minus 350 on Aaron Blanchfield here. But yeah, I said it on my podcast last night. Sarah Alpar, I mean, one of my biggest regrets of the last year was not laying the chalk with Jessica Rose Clark against her. I just don't. I don't.
I want to say this. I went back and listened to my breakdown of that video, and I was just like, do not bait chalk on Jessica Rose Clark. She should win this fight. There's no way she's going to have a performance that goes up to minus 210, minus 225 worthy. And then she goes up there and absolutely beats the brakes off of her. So,
I mean, that's where I was that fight. I was like, after I taped Alpar, and again, after I taped her this time, I was like, man, I don't think Alpar has any chance here. But also, the girl's going to wrestle a lot, and it's Jessica Rose Clark. How can I do this? Yeah. And I feel the same way here, except I think in terms of the grappling, I think Blanchfield's a bit more trustworthy than Jessica Rose Clark is. And she didn't give Jessica Rose Clark many problems, where defensive grappling has kind of been, her kryptonite in the UFC, and Alpar's going to wrestle. I do agree. I think an Alpar path to victory likely looks like 2 or 3 takedowns and a lot of cage push and kind of getting lucky. Obviously maybe something memeing crazy happens, but it's very hard for me to see her winning this fight reliably there. In terms of Blanchfield, I'm fairly bullish on Blanchfield coming into the UFC, I suppose. I think she's a pretty good striker. I think she's a pretty good submission grappler. I do have some worries about, her defensive grappling long-term against elite wrestlers, but she's got very dangerous Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And so I don't think many people are going to be willing to go into her guard. And I don't think, even if Alpar tries here, I think she could be putting herself in a world of trouble there. And so I'm not really overly concerned about that. Yeah, I mean, Blanchfield should handle her, right? Sarah Alpar doesn't really belong in the UFC. Again, she's another one. I appreciate her game plan. Someone who's going to come out there and attempt 8-10 takedowns. They're giving themselves the best chance to win. She's just, not very good. That's just the reality. In terms of props, I thought about Blanchfield KO, but then it's like you rewatch the Clark fight, and Clark KO'd in the last minute, right? I think of the fight. Yeah. It was very late after beating.
Could have stopped it earlier too, though. I think it was Chris Dione who wanted to see a dead body. Let's be honest.
Holding the over 2.5.
Yeah. Hold.
But I wouldn't say I was impressed about anything with Alpar at that fight, but she did show the ability to take a beating. And so I'm a little hesitant to pull the trigger on KO. I don't think playing Blanchfield inside the distance plus 185 is bad. It leaves room for the sub. I don't really want to play an over here just because, it is WMMA, but I really do think it could be one of those things where it's like Alpar takes her out once and ends up getting triangled or armbarred, right? And so I don't really, Alpar's too exploitable defensively for me to play an over. I guess if I was playing aside, it would be Blanchfield inside the distance.
Yeah, that's the thing. I feel like as we need to really see Blanchfield get closer to achieving that potential that a lot of people believe that she has. Because if she gets close to that, even in this fight, she will more than likely get a finish. But we got to see it first, right?
Yeah.
Personally, I don't know. I guess I'm just being a little bit too greedy, wanting more than 285 for that inside the distance. But again,
I guess an argument for it would be, I mean, she did finish Victoria Leonardo, I think, right? And Leonardo is probably a better version of Sarah Alpar, if we're being honest.
Yeah, because it was like 2 head kicks.
Yeah,
that the same exact head kicks that she fucking hit. She hits her twice, and Victoria Leonardo doesn't learn shit about that. Maybe Sarah Alpar saw something on tape that she could be, at least signaled or warned that a head kick is coming.
Can you imagine betting Victoria Leonardo against Mannion Fiora? I did.
Are you a Firo believer yet, or what?
No.
I swear she's fighting in the next couple of weeks, right? She has.
I will be betting on the other side of that.
Oh yeah, Mayra Bueno Silva, right? I think that's right. Yeah. Interesting matchup. I think the line is a little bit wide. They're just off a pre-tape memory, but yeah, I can't wait to get into that one. All right, let's get back to UFC Vegas 37 though, because the next up we got Montel Jackson going up against JP Bays. I feel as though me and John are going to have some same sentiments here, so I'll quickly hopefully try to get through this one so we can get some more thoughts from him. But we got Montel Jackson minus 650 and JP Bays plus 475. We have seen Jackson obviously defeated twice now, Ricky Simone and Brett Johns. Always happy to hit that Brett Johns underdog spot in that fight. I just felt as though it was a very good spot for him to go out there and exploit the somewhat green and somewhat unbattle-tested Montel Jackson. And luckily, Brett Johns was able to do so that night. I still think that Jackson has some solid potential, though. I feel as though he has some decent hands. Good. I think he will have the better striking here compared to JP Bays. But when it comes to the ground game, that's where it should get a little bit interesting. I do feel as though that, Bays has some crafty grappling skills, but I feel as though if he can be broken, as I feel like Montel Jackson will be able to break him, he's going to start to fold. And then after that, he really does start to look for the exit sign more often than not. Very fragile, very, untrustworthy with his durability, which is why I actually like the fight doesn't go to decision here. It's like minus 200 range. I really like that spot. I was hoping that they would set the actual total at 2.5 rather than 1.5, but they're privy to it. They know that Bays obviously looks for that exit sign, but I'm still happy with that slight chalk at minus 200 on the fight doesn't go to decision, because I'd be very surprised that if this fight does actually see that full 15 minutes. I do think that it's going to be Jackson who ends up putting his hands on Bays and gets him out of there. It's just not. It's not promising at all, seeing the way that Bays was reacting to eating those shots by Bruno Silva the other fight, right? And you're talking about Montel Jackson, who probably hits a little bit harder, obviously with his Francis Ngannou-esque hands. He's obviously going to be able to generate more power and probably more damage. And I feel as though at a certain point that Bays, he will obviously be fighting for your money for maybe the first 6 or so minutes. But after that, if he doesn't have much success, I think he's going to actually find that to exit, and we'll see Montel Jackson get him out of there. I'm not fully on board with trusting Montel Jackson yet. I still feel he needs to go out there and prove some more things to us, not just knocking out freaking Jesse Strader, who looks like he had the simple Jack haircut going into that last fight. But yeah, I do think that Montel Jackson can get it done here. In terms of props, like I said, fight doesn't go to decision minus 200. I like that. Under 2.5, if you do have have access to that alternate total, minus 145. I think that's a great line as well. Jackson KO plus 105, Jackson sub plus 555, even Jackson inside the distance, minus 140. A little bit chalky, but again, it's pretty. I feel like the writing's on the wall here in terms of how it should go. John, how do you feel like this one's going to go, brother?
Oh man, I'm anti Montel Jackson. I just have been his entire career. I see the appeal in Montel Jackson as a fighter. Obviously, the guy is enormous for 135. Great athlete, pretty good offensive wrestler, hits very hard, keeps a fairly high output. Those are all, things you look for. My problem with him is I don't think he's made, he's a good offensive wrestler, but I don't think he's made much really of an effort to correct his defensive wrestling. He has the same problems in every single fight. He gets backed up to the fence pretty easy. He doesn't really have much ring craft. And when he's there, he doesn't build a wide base on the fence. So it becomes very easy for guys who can double him like him to clasp their hands, get him down. And then on the mat, he gives up his back every time. Now, you touched on it. He does have those fucking meat cleavers for hands. And somehow just having huge hands has enabled him not be subbed yet, despite everybody who's taken him down getting his back. It's remarkable, to be honest. And, credit to him, I guess, for that. It's one of his inherent physical gifts. But yeah, so generally I haven't been a Jackson guy. I honestly, when this line came out, was fairly certain I was going to bet JP Bays here, just because of the issues I have with Jackson, because Bays will wrestle. The problem is after looking at it a bit more, I don't hate Bays, and I did bet Bruno Silva against him, but I think Bays is a decent game. There's a couple problems here. First of all, Bays isn't a bantamweight. The guy's tiny. He's 5'5". He's not. I know he's talking about, how this is going to be a big difference for him. There's not many 5'5" bantamweights, man. That's real small. Jackson is huge. The second thing is, to beat Jackson, he's got to do one of two things. He's got to be able to sub him or show the discipline to kind of get him down all fight. Could he sub him? Yeah. I touched on the fact Jackson does give his back when he gets taken down, and Bays is a pretty good wrestler. Bays could take him down early and take his back, but I don't, Bays doesn't have great jiu-jitsu, and so I don't think he's going to sub Montel. And the problem, and he could, I just don't think it's a very high outcome. And then, the other way here is he has to be able to grind number 15, and I just think Bays definitively we've seen hasn't displayed the cardio to go a hard 15, which is what he's going to need to go here. Because it's not like he's going to be able to relax at space with Montel. If he's staying in space, things are going to go south in a hurry in all likelihood. And, on top of it, I'm talking about the Bays angle with Bays being able to take Montel down. Montel is probably the better wrestler of the two and can probably take him down as well. And so for all these reasons, I wanted to take Bays. I just don't really see it. I've still thought about it, but it's like, I think Montel is probably 75, 80%. So I don't even think it's necessarily a huge edge here for Bays. What I do like, though, probably the most on this fight is Bays Montel doesn't go to decision. It's around minus 200. And, you touched on it. Bays very fragile. He's been, when he's lost in the past, he's gotten finished. When his gas tank starts to go, he seems to just quit. I don't know if you recall seeing it. He won a fight via disqualification for strikes in the back of the head.
The Russian fight, yeah.
And he was not hurt at all.
He was working that.
He wanted the fuck out of that fight. That is what happened. And, you kind of saw it with Silva, too. As soon as Silva gave him some resistance, it seemed like he didn't want to be there anymore.
Let's be honest, those punches didn't seem the heaviest either that were kind of dropping him and hurting him, right? I don't know. Like, again, I'm sure those punches would knock me the fuck out. But for a fighter, I feel like that impactful.
Well, and it's also just like the way he was reacting to it. Like, instead of like looking to parry or move his head or kind of just find a more advantageous position, he seemed to want to just kind of get away from it, which is not really what you're looking for. And so, I think Jackson's got a great chance to finish. And I do think, the ITD kind of covers Bays' most viable path, which is probably a fairly early submission or maybe a victory via ground and pound.
Yeah, I do think we're going to see some serious violence in this fight. That's why I'd rather take a little bit of chalk on the fight doesn't go to decision rather than just taking the Montel Jackson straight spot here. Last thing I'll say, excuse me. Last thing I'll say about this matchup, if it has any merit at all, in terms of the coaching situation here for JP Bays, normally a Fortis MMA guy, but if you guys remember Cheyenne Baez in her last win, she was talking about how after they got married, she got kind of dragged out to Fortis MMA, and that was more of a, just her kind of going with JP. And then after her first loss, where she lost to Montserrat Ruiz, she decided to go back to Extreme Couture, bring Bays with her, or her husband with her, and they kind of set up camp over there at Extreme Couture. So now it seems like JP Bays is more of an Extreme Couture guy. How much of a difference is going to have on this fight, I'm not 100% sure, but it's still worth to be noted. What's up?
Do you have any friends at Extreme Couture?
Maybe.
Well, I won't say what I was going to
say. What you want?
How many guys have gotten to Extreme Couture and gotten better? I'll wait.
No.
That's
I'm trying to remember the last fighter that actually went to. Well, Francis Ngannou was probably the only guy, right?
He's a freak.
I know, but I mean, like in terms of what he showed in that second Stipe fight, that was Extreme Couture work there in terms of being able to stop takedowns and all that type of shit.
Aljo went there and got worse.
I remember Misha Serkinov. So we actually have an Extreme Couture location up here in Toronto, and Misha Serkinov originally trained out of there. Then he moved down, and then I think that's when he got knocked the fuck out by Ryan Spann. Whatever. Well, if anything, hey, this helps us even more with this fight doesn't go to decision.
Yeah, for sure.
By all means, go to Extreme Couture, my brother. But yeah, I do want to shout out to Eric Nixick over there. That guy's an absolute beast. Did some good things with some good fighters over there. That's all I'm going to say with that. All right, let's move on to the next fight here before I get into some more shit. It was supposed to be Nicholas Motov versus Cameron Van Camp. However, that fight did get pulled, like I said, just less than an hour ago. No clarity in terms of which side got pulled out, but it was due to an injury of some sort. Doesn't matter. Fight's not happening anymore. I know John was saying, thank God that fight got pulled because he didn't even bother tape studying it. So I would have been carrying that breakdown anyway. All right. Let's get to the next fight. Another short notice spot here. We got Brandon Jenkins, who just knocked out former UFC fighter Jacob Kilburn over there in PFL a couple weeks ago. Now he steps in on short notice to fight Zhu Rong. Interesting fight here in terms of odds. I think we got some absolute craziness here. Minus 335 for Zhu Rong, plus 255 for Brandon Jenkins. Don't really understand the line there. I think more so people are just like, oh, this guy's coming in on short notice. This guy was a minus 210 in his UFC debut. Maybe this is his turnaround spot. No, I don't think it's like that. I will say this, though. I'm still not 100% sold on Brandon Jenkins. I will say right off the bat, the line is too wide. If you're looking for value on this fight, you bet on the underdog. However, I'm still coming out on the other side, picking Zhu Rong to win this fight. I just can't. trust him at this minus 335, right? He's a 21-year-old guy, 21 fights under his record, obviously Chinese fights under his record, so we don't know how fishy those are right now in terms of the legitimacy behind them. No matter, not to mention the possible lack of experience in terms of the fighters that he was fighting over there. But here with Brandon Jenkins, he's going to be fighting another solid guy, right? Rodrigo Vargas obviously pulled off the upset in his UFC debut as a plus 185 underdog, and now he's fighting a guy with this kind of similar type of level of experience, right? With a guy like Brandon Jenkins. Nickname, I believe, is the highlight reel, and you kind of see it when you see his fighting style. Throws a lot of spinning, jumping shit, has some good handiwork. I do feel as though when he's the one kind of pushing the pace, he's a little bit more of a pot shotter and just looking for his one KO knockout type of thing. He is a little bit consistent with it, uses his kicks very well in terms of trying to corral his opponents into the direction that he wants to take them. Zhu Rong, I feel like, is a little bit more of a crisper striker. However, I feel like if he does find success in this fight, it will be to drag this fight to the ground. We have seen Brandon Jenkins have tremendous, or huge flaws on the ground. Let's just put it that way. But I'm not completely sold on Zhu Rong being this crazy wrestler or this crazy grappler either. So yeah, this line is too wide to begin with. I have a sneaky suspicion that the under is a little bit of a interesting spot here. I do feel like we're going to see some chaos, and not to mention Brandon Jenkins coming in on short notice. Who knows how fight ready he actually is, right? Is he going to have the gas tank to go 50 minutes if he needs to, or is he going to go out there like a madman and try to decapitate Zhu Rong? No crazy props out yet. We only have the over under. The under 2.5 is at minus 125. I don't mind that. I feel like we're going to see some chaos in this fight. How do you see this one going down?
Well, first of all, we got a big plus number here, and we don't need props. Brandon Jenkins is not good, but Zhu Rong is not good. Okay, I wouldn't like. I know you touched on. He was a minus 210 in his last fight with Kazula Vargas. That line was hilariously bad. Okay, yeah. I don't understand how anybody could have watched his regional tape and been like, "Oh, here we go." I'm going to lay 70% implied on Zhu Rong here. And I bet Vargas there pretty confidently, and he did what I expected him to do. I don't disagree with you that Rong is probably a crisper and more technical striker. I'm trying to think of the best way to enunciate this. But I do think when it comes to actually making reads, that Jenkins is a bit better. So, I think Rong can out-technique him in some regards, but I think Jenkins probably has better timing and is a better counter-striker than Rong is. On top of which, my general issue with Rong, he is somewhat technical and he hits hard. It's that he has virtually no ability to win minutes. He doesn't do things. I think he threw 78 total strikes against Kazula Vargas. That's crazy. Especially a guy I might have given some credence to this being like, oh, step up in competition for Brandon Jenkins. Maybe he'll let his hands go more, except it's not really. Brandon Jenkins has actually fought a pretty difficult, strength of schedule comparatively for most guys making a debut in the UFC. Probably a stronger strength of schedule than what Zhu Rong has fought, if we're being honest here. And Vargas is bottom tier. So I don't really think there's a lot of reason to think Rong is going to suddenly up his output. And if he doesn't, it's yeah, Jenkins is very hittable and he could knock him out, but Jenkins is also very, very durable. You see it in just about every fight of his. And so the best case scenario for Rong, if he doesn't knock him out, is kind of, in my opinion, on the feet anyway, is winning a close decision where maybe he wins on damage optics, because I do think he gets outlanded pretty regularly. The real question is, will Rong try to take him down a lot? And if so, does he dominate him there? Because we have seen Jenkins have issues there. I guess the issue for me is I don't think Rong's a very good grappler. Even when he's been on top, he just does a lot of stuff that I don't think is very technical and kind of leaves you a lot of openings to get back to your feet. Maybe Jenkins can't capitalize on that, but I do think when looking at this fight, to come to the conclusion Rong is, 75, 80% implied, somewhere in there, that he should be that big of a favorite, you have to think he can dominate the fight consistently in one area, and I just don't really see how anybody could come to that conclusion, if I'm being honest. I agree the under could be interesting, because Jenkins he's a bit crazy in there. He will try to force a finish in fights, and Rong does hit hard, but in general, I'm happy to play Jenkins at plus 250 here, to be honest.
Yeah, this is one of those fights that's kind of a definition of, the odds are just way off, right? The odds are way too off. I don't know how you can come to a conclusion that Rong deserves to be this big of a favorite. I think the main leading factor to that is the fact that people just see Jenkins coming in on short notice in the spot. That's really about it, right?
Yeah.
That's really the only conclusion I can come down to. All right, let's move on to, yeah. Let's move on to the next fight here. We got Patty Kianzad going up against Raquel Pennington. In terms of odds, we got minus 125-ish on Pennington, plus 105 on Patty Kianzad. And I've never been a huge fan of Pennington in the past, but I feel as though we have to start giving her due in terms of, she's not great at anything, but she's kind of good at almost everything, right? She's getting better in terms of her cardio, is obviously looking better training there up in Colorado. Physically speaking, she's obviously getting into better shape than she's ever been in before. So that definitely will always help in terms of, implementing clinch heavy or grapple heavy approaches if that's what she needs to do. And I feel as though she's going to have to do that here against a girl like Patty Kianzad. The fight that I kind of go back and look at and see, okay, what can we take away from this fight that could possibly go with this fight is the Irene Aldana fight, where you have a girl that's, a good technical striker, can fight from the outside, likes to fight at distance and get their striking going from there, just like Patty Kianzad. However, I feel like Patty at times is just a little bit too disciplined, if you understand what I mean, right? She waits a little bit too much. She waits for openings. And then by that time, she's getting touched up or she's getting pushed back. And optically speaking, it just doesn't look too good to the judges. I will say, I thought Alexis Davis made a damn good case in terms of beating Patty Kianzad that night. If you look on MMA decisions, a lot of people had Davis winning that fight. And I feel as though you're getting a much better version of Alexis Davis here with Raquel Pennington, who has, better striking, better cardio, better forward movement, and more reliable to, engage in the clinch and try to drag fights to the ground, just as we saw her doing the Irene Aldana fight. So I like Pennington in this fight. I'm kind of surprised how much I like her here. Penny, technically speaking, is the better striker. Don't get me wrong, but that doesn't always mean that fighter is going to win. Just like Zhu Rong and fucking Brandon Jenkins, right? It doesn't always mean that the more technical striker is going to win. In this situation, I think that Pennington consistently pushing her back, optically always a really good fighter in terms of trying to win fights. And yeah, I think that this is a very good spot for her to go out and beat a girl like Patty Kianzad, who has a little bit of momentum behind her now, but I think it comes to a stop here. I don't think that Patty gets behind or gets past a girl like Pennington. Obviously, no real keenness on betting a finish in this fight. I don't think either woman gets a finish. I think they're both quite durable. Pennington, not a notorious finisher either. So we're going to go to the decision prop, as we always do, plus 125 for Pennington via decision. That's why I like her. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I like Penny's boxing a lot. I mean, what's not to like? She's obviously a very, very technical boxer. The problem is I think her game is very one-dimensional. I faded her in each of her last two fights, and I felt like I had the analysis right in both fights. Eubanks takes her down around one, holds her down fairly easily, but then gassed out and couldn't get her down again. And then last fight, Davis gave her all you could see. Davis just a far more diverse striker, and she was doing things that Penny just doesn't have really the skill set to deal with. But ultimately, it was a very close fight that ended up. I think it was a split decision, right? Am I wrong about that?
The Davis one, I believe it was unanimous. Sorry, let me just
that just really freaked me out.
Look that up. yeah, I apologize.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very, very close fight. Either way. Okay, so. But it was a close fight. I thought Davis had won. But coming in here, it's like, I think Pennington, I'm not sure I would say Pennington is a better distance striker than Davis, but I think she just offers more ways to nullify Penny's offense. Like you touched on it with the Aldana fight. Irene Aldana, one of the highest volume strikers in WMMA, and I think she only landed like 40 strikes across the whole fight because Pennington really plays the inside-outside game really well. She's not going to sit down in the pocket and let you punch her in the face. She's either going to hang on the outside, throw kicks, try to dart in and out, or pin you to the fence and clinch you up there. And I don't really think Penny has the tools to deal with that, especially because I do think Pennington can probably corral her on the fence. I don't really expect Pennington to attempt a ton of takedowns. Not really her game, but I think she should own her in the clinch here, to be completely honest. And I also I don't really think Pennington's seeing anything she hasn't dealt with before. Like, this is a girl who went 4.5 rounds with Amanda Nunes. She went to a decision with Jermaine Durandamy. Relatively close. She's had some close fights with very, very good competition. And so I don't really think even standing, Penny can really dominate. I think it's probably close at distance. And Pennington just has massive upside in terms of the clinch or if she hits takedowns. And so, I mean, yeah, I like Pennington here. In terms of props, though, this is a juicy one, but I do like the goes decision minus 300. And I'll tell you, and I don't mind Pennington by decision either, to be honest, but I'll tell you why. Pennington hasn't finished anybody since 2015. Very raw Jessica Andrade, who she finished there on the mat, who was making a lot of mistakes on the mat. And I don't think Pennington has a better top game than Ciara Eubanks, to be honest. And Eubanks did pass her guard a lot, but Eubanks is much more active on top than Pennington is. And so I kind of think even if Pennington hits a takedown or two here, she's not likely. The chances of her finishing are quite low. And on the feet, I think it's probably, I'd be very surprised if anybody got flash KO'd here. And a standing KO probably requires an injury of some sort or a cut, Pennington's super tough. I can't see Penny finishing her. And, Pennington couldn't put away Marion Renault's corpse on the feet. So, I it's minus 300, but I like it, that goes the distance here. And I like Pennington decision.
Not often. We can clip that because not often do you hear my guy John say minus 300. A little
Never.
juicy, but I like it. You never hear that, John. So, go ahead and stick that into your parlays if you want. And if it crashes, you can blame John. All right, let's move on to the next
crashes,
fight.
That's why I don't bet minus 300s.
There you go. All right, next up we got, I believe this is the prelim headliner. We got Tufan Nchukwi going up against Mike Rodriguez. Minus 120 on Nchukwi now and plus 100 for Mike Rodriguez. Both of them having underwhelming performances last time around. Obviously, Mike Rodriguez, probably my least or my lowest moment of my betting career, backing him as a heavy favorite against a guy like Danilo Marquez. It pains my heart to even bring that up, to be honest, because I don't know what the fuck I was thinking there. For me, it was more so downplaying the skill set of Danilo Marquez. I really don't think he's a good fighter. And obviously I should have waited until at least getting a guy like Kennedy and Nchukwi, who even still pre-fight, I wasn't confident enough in taking Danilo. I was probably having some, as Z would say, PTBD, post-traumatic bet disorder. I felt like taking Kennedy, and that's where I probably would have been the best way to go. With that said, though, Mike Rodriguez, good striker, has some good power. Obviously, a Muay Thai background. Looks like a fish out of water off of his back, which is obviously not a good thing. But I'd be surprised if we see much grappling in this fight. But Tufan Nchukwi is coming back up to 205 pounds after losing his last fight to Junyoung Park. And it seems like everybody's jumping off the Tufan train after he lost to Park last time around. I don't know if that's people just, completely shitting on Nchukwi now, or just significantly underrating what Junyoung Park was bringing to the table. I still think Tufan has some decent skill sets that he can bring to the table here. And I feel like if he can't get past a guy like Mike Rodriguez, it's not a good look. Personally, I do like the Tufan side here. I do think that he'll be able to put on some decent combinations, some decent striking to at least kind of freeze Mike Rodriguez. And I could see some situations where he pushes him up against the cage and has some decent success there. He's very... he has some decent output in the clinch with his knees. He stays active enough in there. I will say, though, Mike Rodriguez, heavy elbows in the clinch. Obviously, as we saw in that Marcin Tybura fight, Marcin Prachnio fight, being able to dispatch of him with those elbows there. It's such a weird fight for me, but I have this weird confidence in Tufan to be able to right his wrongs of his last fight. I feel as though 185 was not a good spot for him. Too slow for that division. Needs to go up and fight these, guys nicknamed Slow Mike Rodriguez, right? He needs to go out there and fight guys like these. And I feel like he's going to be the tighter, crisper striker here. I even think he could potentially find a finish here against Rodriguez. I still believe in his power. I think he could find that chin of Mike and put him down. So obviously in terms of props, I'm looking at Tufan via KO. Why don't I have this up right? There it is. Tufan via KO, currently sitting at plus 200. I do think he has the chops to go out there and knock out a guy like Mike Rodriguez, who, man, again, it might be the PTBD for me, but, finishing at Herman twice and not getting his hand raised still, and even the Danilo Marquez fight where he just did not pull the trigger at all, not a good look. Obviously, back against the wall now. If he loses this one, he's probably out of the UFC, but I do like Tufan here. I think he bounces back and he gets a vicious KO by taking out Mike Rodriguez. I feel as though you're going to have a different take here. So lay it on me, brother.
How do you feel? Very, very different take. I am not a Tufan guy, to be honest. I faded him in his contenders fight against Alma Davao, who was 2 weight classes smaller. I faded him big against Junyoung Park in his last fight. And I still, I am with you. Like Mike, if Mike Rodriguez was like, not a flake and had great fight IQ, I would be on him huge here. I do think he's that, and I do think he's prone to kind of collapsing if things start to go south on him and just making a lot of dumb mistakes. But I look at the fight and I'm just like, my view on Tufan has always kind of been, I appreciate the output he brings for his size. Like, that's great. The problem is, I'm not saying he can't be a good fighter in the UFC. I think he was rushed to the promotion and he is not even almost ready for it at this time. The problem is, he doesn't really cut the cage well at all. When he comes into the pocket, he kind of does the Gagey thing where he shells up instead of moving his head to play defense, which obviously he leaves a ton of openings to the body. And, it's pretty easy to punch around a guard in MMA. And against a guy like Rodriguez, who is going to work the body and who actually does have decent ring craft, it's something that's a huge concern for me. On top of which, I think there's a big speed edge for Rodriguez here, on top of also having a somewhat significant size edge as well on Tefon. And so, I look at it standing and it's I don't like Mike Rodriguez, but I think he's actually a pretty good striker, to be honest. It's just he has fight IQ issues and he has a tendency to panic when he gets grappled, but even in the grappling, I don't really think Tefon can hold him down. Rod's got decent first level get up. It's like when he fights a guy like Marquez who can get on top of him and pass his guard, but he was getting up against John Alon fine. And I think that's Tefon probably a similar top game there. But yeah, I think Rod's a level or two better as a striker, to be completely honest, at this point in his career. Now, I'm not saying Tefon can't get better. He's very, very young, but I looked at this fight and I'm just I can't say I don't see how Tefon wins. I think him pressuring Rodriguez and finding a knockout on the chin is very, very in play. But I do think, minute to minute, I think Rod's going to have his way here, to be completely honest. So I bet Rodriguez as a dog here. In terms of, props for the fight, I actually like Rodriguez by decision a lot because I do think, Junyoung Park, hit Tefon a lot here and, also got on top and beat, was crushing him at the end of that fight and couldn't finish him. I kind of think Tefon's super, super durable. And so I'm not saying Rod can't finish him. He certainly can, but I think there's a fairly strong chance he doesn't. And I do favor Rod minute to minute pretty heavily. And so when I was looking at the fight, I'm I favor Rod decently. And I think a large portion of his win equity is decision. So for me, plus 230 is a pretty decent number there. So yeah, I like Rodriguez here.
God damn. Right back on the horse with the guy, Mike Rodriguez. But again, both guys, even no matter who you're backing here, they obviously had a very underwhelming performance last time around. So good to dig into the tape and try to find that edge here. Obviously, I'm picking the Tefon KO side, and John is taking Rodriguez by decision. Completely different takes here. So let's see who ends up coming out on the right side here. All right, let's move on to the next fight. And I believe this is the main card opener. And I always want to take this time to remind you guys, make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then obviously go support my guy, John, by following him on Twitter at MMA Fox, and obviously following his own channel, Club and Sub Podcast. They do their show every Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Eastern. Link is in the description below for the channel, so make sure you guys give him a subscribe over there. All right, let's move on to this first fight. On the main card, we got Joaquin Buckley going up against Antonio Arroyo. In terms of odds, we got minus 200 for Buckley, plus 170 for Antonio Arroyo. Interesting fight here. We know what we're going to get with Buckley at all times, although I will give him the benefit of the doubt this time around in terms of he no longer is carrying that pressure, right? There's a lot of pressure on your shoulders to go out there and try to capitalize on that crazy knockout that he had over Impa Kasanganay. And then, obviously dispatches of Jordan Wright the way that he did, and then gets head kicked to Mars by Alessio Di Chirico back in January. Now he's taken roughly 9 months off, gets back into the cage, and I feel as though he's going to be a little bit freer and a little bit. I don't think he'll have as much pressure on himself. I feel like we'll see him go out there and put on a classic Buckley type performance, which is head down, move forward, throw big wigging hooks, try to just eventually find that knockout blow, or at least look like you're winning on the cards or optically enough that the judges are actually going to give you a decision here. Antonio Arroyo finally fighting somebody that's probably not going to attack him from a grapple heavy stance. Obviously Arroyo's strength is his striking, so I'd be interested to see if he can finally let his hands go here. I will say the line is a little bit wide. I'm not trusting Buckley at minus 200 here, although I do believe he has a style to go out there and give a guy like Antonio Arroyo troubles. He should be able to move forward. He should be able to land some big shots. And I think he can actually put out Arroyo later in this fight. I think Buckley has solid cardio. I think he can go out there and keep up that Buckley type pace for 15 minutes. And I feel eventually he's going to find that chin of Arroyo, as I believe that Arroyo does have a pretty bad gas tank, and I believe you can definitely question his chin here, especially once he gets checked by a guy Joaquin Buckley. So I'm going to take Buckley here. I have heard some inklings out there that he's working a lot on his wrestling, so maybe he wants to take a page out of Deron Wynn's book and try to grapple fuck Antonio Arroyo here. I'm sure Arroyo will not be happy if that's the case, given that he's thinking he's going to go out there and have a striking battle with Buckley, but you got to be ready for everything once you're taking on when you're in the MMA cage here. So I do like Buckley. I do like Buckley by KO as well. I do think he's going to eventually find that chin. I think the later that this fight goes, the more chances he'll actually find the chin here. And in terms of odds, Buckley by KO plus 100. I wish we were getting a little bit more on that, to be honest. But I wouldn't even mind poking the round props here. Buckley round 2 plus 475. Buckley round 3 plus 850. I think he eventually finds that chin after breaking that guard and eventually breaking Arroyo down. How do you feel like this one goes down, brother?
Yeah, I mean, God, this is such a weird fight. And like, I really, really wanted to bet Arroyo here. There's just like so many holes in his game, though. I think Arroyo, like you touched on, like, the Buckley and Arroyo side pretty well. I think Arroyo does some stuff that can affect Buckley, the knees up the middle, the head kicks. I don't really think the Jericho head kick was as random as most head kicks are, primarily because, Buckley, he has a tendency to like dip every time he enters the pocket. He's there to get kicked all the time in the head. He just makes, he's a little reckless when he comes in too. So like, he's there to get countered hard by legs. And so like, I think, Arroyo could do stuff to present problems for him, especially if Buckley kind of does what he has want to do sometimes and blitz from a bit too far out and come up a bit short. He could find himself in a bit of trouble. But like, the problem for me is, while I can see, an Arroyo head kick KO, I can see him hurting him in knees up the middle and stuff, a few times. I just don't think Arroyo does a whole lot else that really affects him here. Arroyo doesn't seem very comfortable using his boxing. He's so much bigger. If I had faith that he could jab and kind of circle off, I'd be pretty confident playing him here. But he doesn't really jab at all. He just doesn't really box. And Buckley's going to go forward. And Arroyo, when you get him backed up, chin in the air, he does that typical, lean back and try to avoid, getting hit, which when you're against the cage doesn't tend to work too well. I will give him credit. He's reasonably durable, it seems like. But you put yourself in enough spots against a guy like Buckley who's going to go forward and let his hands go, and I think he's there to be hurt. So like I said, it's weird because, again, I can see Arroyo doing things to affect Buckley and cause him like real problems in this fight. Between the cardio, like I don't think Buckley has great cardio, but I think it's adequate. Whereas I don't think Arroyo's is adequate at all. And so it's like round 3, you'd favor Buckley pretty heavily in the event that it went there. And even early in the fight, Arroyo's output is so low, I'd still lean to Buckley on minutes. And so I think Arroyo's win condition is pretty much narrow to, could he win a decision? Sure, but I think it's massively in favor of KO here. And Buckley, I do kind of think if Buckley doesn't get killed, his style is such that he's likely to, basically force a finish. And so I kind of like, the fight, the under 1.5 here, like plus 100. I also kind of like Arroyo round 1 plus 1,000, since I do think, if he's going to win the fight in, period, the vast majority of the time, it's going to be a very early KO. So yeah, I think those are my two takes, because I do think Buckley's going to do the kind of things that are going to force these guys to exchange and people to get hit hard with two guys who have finishing ability. And yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to play Arroyo, play the early props.
Yeah, I think if you guys actually go back and watch the Jericho fight for Buckley, one of the first things that Cormier says that Jericho should do to win that fight is just kick. And he kept kicking, yeah, and eventually went to the head and knocked him out. I will say this about Arroyo: his kicking game is probably one of the better things about his striking style to begin with. So hopefully he can go out there and implement something like that if he wants to get a victory here. But yeah, minus 200 on Buckley at this point in time, a little bit too wide for me to be happy with it. But I don't mind that. I would rather take the juice on that 2.5. Under 2.5 at minus 210, just in case. But yeah, I'll probably be punting on that plus 850 Buckley round 3 as well, though.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good point, especially.
Sorry, plus 1,000 Arroyo round 1 is absolutely crazy as well too. That's a very good spot there, brother.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got Nate Maness going up against Tony Gravely. We got minus 200. Yeah, minus 200 on Gravely, plus 170 on Nate Maness. And this is the fighter that I've kind of been looking to or waiting for to fade a guy like Nate Maness, right? Maness, when he initially came to the UFC, he was scheduled to fight Ray Borg, and I was ready to take Ray Borg in that spot because I thought he was going to go out there and absolutely grapple fuck Nate Maness. Now we got a guy in Gravely who should be able to go out there and do the same thing. So win-win here, and we got minus 200 on Gravely as well. I think it's a good spot for him. I do have slight concerns because I feel as though at later in fights, it seems like Gravely slightly slows down, and Maness, by all accounts, his cardio doesn't look horrible. I feel like his striking will be, a notch better than what Gravely brings to the table. But Gravely is still good enough with the striking that he should be able to evade any type of knockout scenario here. It's just if this fight gets late. Luckily, though, I feel as though he has the chops to go out there and finish a guy like Maness. I feel like he can take him down. I feel like he can pass the guard, and I feel like he can get to a dominant position and get that finish. I truly think that Maness was saved by the bell against Munoz in that first round. If you guys remember watching that, he quickly got to that full mount position, got his back, started raining down shots. If he had another maybe 10 or 15 seconds, he probably would have gotten that stoppage. Now, obviously, don't get me wrong, Munoz is a very high-level jiu-jitsu player, pretty much born on the mats. But Gravely, very good wrestler, but he has a pretty good jiu-jitsu game of his own in terms of passing guard and all that. I don't think Maness has much to offer off of his back. He's a good club and subber, or much better off of his off with his top game than he is off of his back. But I think that if Gravely gets him down here, I don't think he'll have too much trouble in terms of passing guard and getting too much more dominant positions. So I actually like Gravely inside the distance here. I do think that he'll go out there and get the finish here against a guy like Nate Maness, who has some decent momentum behind his name now. But I feel as though nobody has really attacked him from that grapple-heavy approach other than Johnny Munoz, who, again, great jiu-jitsu player, slightly question his wrestling credentials and his capabilities, but we know that Tony Gravely will definitely be the better takedown artist here. So we saw Munoz truly struggle to get Maness down in the second rounds. I don't think we're going to see that here from Gravely if that gets to the second round. I think we'll see him easily get this fight to the ground, pass that guard, and eventually find that finish. So in terms of odds for the props, Gravely inside the distance, plus 235. I don't mind a little bit of a shot there. I'm a little bit stumped in terms of whether it's going to be KO or submission, because I feel like he can go for both if he wants to. But I do like plus 235, like I said, for him to win inside the distance. The other prop that I actually really like here, I truly think Maness's win conditions here is more so a finish more than anything. So the under 2.5 at plus 155, I don't mind that either. I was close to making that a dog with a night play for myself, as I feel like both guys have finishing capabilities here. Obviously, Maness with his hands and possible club in sub situations, and then Gravely obviously on the ground, as I believe he's truly going to dominate from that top position. So I am going Gravely inside the distance plus 235, but I do like the under 2.5 to possibly cover a Nate Maness finish as well, plus 155. I love that spot. I feel like you're having a different take here. I can't wait to hear it. Let's go.
I mean, I also would bet Ray Borg against Nate Maness, and I love Gravely in this spot, to be honest with you. I think it's pretty easy to kind of – I've seen some contrarian Maness takes, and I'm not saying, look, if you see an angle on a dog, I mean, go for it. I'm always that guy. But, like, my problem is, he defended takedowns against Luke Sanders and Johnny Munoz for a lot in those fights. The thing is, Gravely's a much different level of wrestler than those guys are. Just watch, the way they set up takedowns, the way they work from the clinch, from one takedown to the next. It's just he's operating on a different level than those guys are, in my opinion, and a level that I just don't think Maness can keep up with. He just hasn't shown the ability to do that throughout his career. And on top of that, Maness is going to back straight up to the cage. And so Gravely is going to be able to close distance pretty easily, I think. So I kind of think he works Maness without too much issue in the grappling. Kind of like you said, I do have some concerns. Things could get a little dicey in round 3. The thing is, I'd be more concerned if Maness was more like a Geraldo de Freitas, who's going to bite the mouthpiece and go forward. That's not really his game, though. I'd call him more of a counter striker. Sanders just kept giving him his fight and bombing into the pocket and getting countered every time he went in there. I don't think Gravely will do that if he does slow down. And Gravely, he's going to try to play the inside-out game. He's not going to go and swing in the pocket with Maness either. And so I don't think the chances of a Maness finish in any round are super high. Maybe a little higher at the end, but I don't think so much. In terms of, I like Gravely on the money line quite a bit here. I bet him at minus 185. I think there's still a little bit of meat on the bone. And look, again, I'm a very anti-juice guy, but I just think, that Gravely is just at a completely different level than what Maness is personally. In terms of props, I'm kind of on the other side from you here, because I wasn't impressed with Maness's bottom game against Munoz. Obviously I wasn't impressed, but I do think Munoz is a much more dangerous grappler on top than Gravely is. Obviously Gravely will throw ground and pound, and it's certainly possible, he ends up mounting him or gets back mount at some point and finishes him here. But I do kind of think, Gravely, if he's smart, is just going to try to lock down top position and hold him there. And, maybe he'll finish him on top. But my own view is, I've seen Maness survive on the mat before. I'm inclined to think he probably will here as well. So, I kind of think a Gravely decision is almost even money, and you're getting it at plus 150. So, I actually like that quite a bit here.
Tony Gravely, 12 out of his 21 victories coming via finish. But 8 out of his last 9 wins have all come via finish. So he's definitely more of a finisher now than he was earlier in his career. So I'm looking forward to seeing if he can do that here against Nate Maness. Last thing I'll say about this matchup, the fight that I'm always kicking myself about is the Jesse Arnett fight for Nate Maness. Jesse Arnett, a guy that I kind of know myself, very good wrestler. Like when he is on, very good wrestler, very slick BJJ, can definitely tie dudes up in knots. But for some reason, he decided to go out there and just absolutely strike with Nate Maness for the entirety of that fight, and then eventually gets knocked out in that fight. So not a good look for him there. But I felt as though if he went out there and implemented that wrestling, we would have saw the flaws in Nate Maness's game, and he probably wouldn't have won that TKO title. But luckily, we got Tony Gravely this weekend, and we know that he's going to go out there and grapple. If he doesn't grapple,
nope.
Throw my head through the wall. We'll see how that fucking goes.
Cut him if he doesn't grapple.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. Very excited for this one. It's always a treat to see my guy Arman Tsarukyan get inside the cage. Come in, obviously, I was a huge favorite. Minus 750, plus 525 is the return on Christos Giagos. Not too much to break down here, right? Giagos' strength is mainly wrestling. Again, throw my head through the fucking wall if he goes out there and wrestles Arman Tsarukyan this weekend. And then outside of that, I think Tsarukyan has him covered everywhere. I feel as though Giagos needs to come in with a super reckless game plan to try to catch Tsarukyan with something if he's going to have any success in this fight, because we know his gas tank is not that great either. I feel as though Tsarukyan is leveling up on a fight-to-fight basis, training over there. Well, initially over there at Tiger Muay Thai. Seems like Tiger Muay Thai is just completely falling apart now. The Hickman brothers have left that gym, and a lot of their big fighters have left that gym. A lot of them actually going down to American Top Team, just like Petr Yan and just like Arman Tsarukyan. His striking continues to look better on a fight-to-fight basis, right? Like it looks smooth. It looks like he's getting some power behind it as well, and getting a lot of comfortability behind it too. I feel as though he just owns Giagos everywhere here. And I know he doesn't have a finish inside the UFC to this point, but he hasn't gone up against a guy who has as bad of a gas tank as Christos Giagos. And I feel like at this certain moment, this is the perfect intersection for Arman Tsarukyan's talent and him getting a finish against some guy that doesn't have a good gas tank. And I feel like this is the spot for Tsarukyan to go out there and get his first ever UFC finish. So Tsarukyan inside the distance, again, I think it could come submission or KO. So let's just cover both of those by not being too greedy. Tsarukyan inside the distance at plus 170, I think is a great line. If you want to take the round props as well, Tsarukyan round 2 plus 550, Tsarukyan round 3 plus 975. I think he takes that first round to kind of feel it out. Giagos is going to start to slow down as that pace continues to build. And then I think we see Tsarukyan eventually find that finish. Love that spot. Probably one of my favorite props on the card is Tsarukyan inside the distance. Am I not giving Giagos enough credit here, or do you think he actually gets finished in this fight?
Well, first of all, I mean, it's such a bummer that this is the fight they're making for Arman Tsarukyan, right? I mean, like...
I'll say this. I know that they've just been trying to get higher level guys. They've been trying. Like, I have it on good account that they have had a bunch of high level names. All of them turn it down. Lose situation for those guys, right? You beat a guy named Arman Tsarukyan, the regular layman person has no idea who the fuck this kid is, right? So continue. Sorry.
I like totally believe that. It's just a shame. Like, he debuts against Islam Makhachev and actually gives him a fight. You know? At 22 years old. Then he beats Olivier Aubin-Mercier, who, look, he's not great, but he's pretty good. You know, he was a top 25 lightweight, top 20 lightweight while he was in the UFC. He beats the shit out of Davi Ramos. Like, it's such a bummer the Nasrat fight got canceled, and now Nasrat's fighting next week. Like, what?
Maybe. Apparently Dan Hooker might be out, right?
Really?
He's having some issues with his visa or something. I thought I saw online. So
that would suck.
Yeah. I know. Some good plus money in that fight. Anyway.
Yes, that is correct. But yeah, I mean, I am a huge Tsarukyan dick rider. I think he is fucking awesome, man. Like, I honestly, I said after he lost to Islam, I think one day that fight's going to happen down the road. He's going to beat Islam, to be honest. You know,
or a belt, probably.
Almost either him or Gregor, right? It's going to be Gregor, not McGregor. Yeah. Let me be clear.
Better clear that up.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's going to happen at some point. It's funny because I looked at this line, and I've always been a lot more bullish on Christos Giagos than the market as a whole is. Like, I actually appreciate what he brings in there. He is a good athlete, and like, he's a good wrestler, and early in fights, you know, he can be very explosive on the feet. The problem with Giagos is he obviously slows insanely fast. Like when you look at the fights where he's won a decision have been fights where he's basically been able to just kind of grind out on top and kind of rest on top when he slows down. And that's just not really on the table here. I don't see any way that he outgrapples Armand, to be honest. That you would need the only way he could win this fight via grappling is if he was to like sting him on the feet and sub him. And even that seems remarkably unlikely to me. I do think like early in the fight, could Giagos give him, you make it like semi-competitive? Maybe, he might be able to make it like a 60-40 first round, but like I still have to favor Tsarukyan fairly massively early in the fight. And it's like, we know once that 7-minute fight mark hits, Giagos is pretty much fucked. And the thing is like, well, what if he fights more restrained? The thing is Armand's so much better technically. Giagos needs to come out aggressive. And if he doesn't, he's going to get eaten alive here. If he does come out aggressive, I think Armand finishes him late fairly often. I actually kind of think in looking at props for this fight, I think, targeting like Tsarukyan 2-3 isn't bad. It's like plus 550 and plus 575. I'm not saying he can't win the fight, finish the fight early. He certainly can, but early Giagos is going to be, he'll be fresh. And like I said, Giagos is a good athlete. And I actually think he's, probably a little underrated, but yeah, I mean, I just struggle to see where short of him, like pulling off a miracle and maiming him, I don't really think he offers much resistance to Armand anywhere, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if he actually survives the full 50 minutes with a beast like Armand, to be honest. So yeah, I think the inside the distance again, plus 165, plus 155. I think that's a great fucking line on Tsarukyan to get a finish in this spot. All right, let's move on to the next fight. I think we only have 3 fights left here. Yeah, we got 3 fights left. Next up, we got Ariane Lipski versus Manny Bohm. Talk about a follow-up fight from the complete dominance that we're going to be seeing from Armand Tsarukyan. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 120-ish for Lipski and plus 100 for Manny Bohm. Now, when I was doing the tape on Manny Bohm, I saw on the tape of next we have her first 2 fights and then her last 2 fights. So there's about 3 or 4 fights in between that amount of time. And you see a clear progression from her from like that second fight to the second last fight, right? It was hilarious watching those first 2 fights because it was just so low level. There's one moment where she's getting dropped with a jab or something, and then the next second she's in full mount somehow, some way. Like I just didn't understand it. It was that low level. It does seem like her striking did get better over that amount of time. She did some decent work in terms of improving her distance management, having some good work in the clinch at times. She does lean on takedowns every now and then if she needs to, but it feels like she wants to go out there and actually strike with her opponents. Ariane Lipski, on the other hand, just can't confidently go out there and back her against anybody that has shown in the past that they go for takedowns. And Lipski, with her, disappearing takedown defense on a fight-to-fight basis is not a good look. I believe this is her second camp that she's actually going to have over there at American Top Team. So let's see if they've actually instilled anything in her or given her anything, if you know what I'm talking about. But I do think that Lipski is the much better striker here. By all accounts, she should go out there and torch Manny Bohm on the feet. It's just, can she keep it on the feet? If Manny Bohm is smart and if she is taking heed from her main cornerman, who's, I believe, going to be Daniel Weichel, Bellator veteran, black belt in jiu-jitsu, she's going to want to drag this to the ground and try to get her out of there. I think a sneaky play in this is actually the under 2.5, because I think both women are just slightly reckless enough for a finish to occur in this, whether it's a submission or a TKO on either side. The under 2.5 currently sits at plus 180. I could see it happening. I do reluctantly end up on the Lipski side, given her level of competition, who she's been fighting, where she's training, all that type of stuff. But it's just that takedown defense that is keeping me from actually pulling the trigger here on Lipski. I do think she eventually finds that TKO in the second round here by overwhelming Mandy Bohm on the feet and getting her out of there. Lipski by a TKO is plus 500. I think that's worth a little bit of a sprinkle here. But even that under 2.5 to cover a potential finish by Bohm, plus 185 is not too bad of a line either. So again, reluctantly on the Lipski side of things, Lipski KO plus 500, under 2.5. How are you seeing this one?
First of all, call the police for whoever booked this fight. How did this end up where this is on the card? I don't really understand how Mandy Bohm is in the UFC, if I'm being completely honest. I don't, maybe you see something that I'm not, but I don't really see it. In her regional footage, that did not strike me as someone who is ready to have fights with UFC fighters. And I guess you could make the argument that Ariane Lipski is not that. But I think you nailed the breakdown, to be honest, really. I do think, I haven't bet the fight, And it's another fight that I've kind of been like torturing myself in my head where it's like, it is really a good step down for Lipski here. Like it should be a good matchup for her. I agree. On the feet, I don't think this is a competitive fight at all. I think she absolutely tortures Bohm standing. It's just like Lipski's not a bad striker, to be honest. She's had her issues in the UFC, but most of them have come from, being taken down and dominated on the mat. Even standing with JoJo, like I'd say JoJo was winning the stand-up, but it was competitive. And like JoJo's a top 8 girl in that division, right? So like I think Lipski's a pretty, I don't want to say like she's not a high-level striker, but she's a solid striker for the UFC. She's a UFC level striker. Whereas I don't think Bohm is anywhere near that. Like I think she pretty much toys with her standing. The problem is for me, it's kind of like what you touched on, which is, Bohm, when she's not having success, will try to wrestle. And we have seen Lipski taken down, basically have no ability to retain her guard at all, and basically get passed through and finished on the mat numerous times now. Now, I don't think Bohm's a high-level wrestler. I don't think she's a high-level grappler. I don't think she has this particularly high-level top game. But if I'm backing Lipski, it's like, I have to be pretty sure she isn't going to end up stuck on her back. It's kind of similar to why I passed on Ji Young Kim a couple weeks ago, which ironically, I ended up being wrong about that fight altogether. Yeah. But I do think that's an interesting comparable fight in the sense that a Bohm win likely looks like her hitting a couple takedowns and holding Lipski down. The thing is, I'm much more confident in Lipski's ability to dominate on the feet than I am in Bohm's ability to dominate on the mat, if you get what I'm saying. Like, There is a chance that Lipski can just out-scramble her or sub her off her back. I don't think Bohm's a great grappler. So I'm still toying with the idea of playing with her. I haven't. In terms of props, like, I kind of agree with you, to be honest. Bohm is there to get fucking cracked standing, and she's going to get hit a lot on the feet here. And on the mat, I think the finish could happen both ways, to be honest. Like I said, I don't really rate Bohm as a grappler. And so Lipski will throw up subs, and her catching her here wouldn't shock me. But also at the same time, like I said, Lipski gives up position so easily. Would anybody really be shocked if she ends up like in back mount getting pounded on here? That wouldn't shock me either. So like, it's a fight where it's going to be a lot of action, and even on the mat, there should be a lot of action. So I kind of agree. I think it's pretty wide on the doesn't go. I like doesn't go. I like the under. I even like Lipski KO, to be honest, or maybe Lipski ITD because she could sub her. But yeah, I mean, I lean Lipski here. It would be impossible for me to back Bohm in this spot, whereas I can see a reason to be on Lipski.
Just to give a slight more, or at least instill a little bit more confidence on the Lipski side of things, we can at least say that Shevchenko and De La Rosa are far greater threats in terms of the grappling realm than what Bohm brings to the table. So even if Bohm does land a takedown here, we're not 100% sure she's actually going to be the one staying on top and maintaining the top control.
Well, and that's a great point too, right? Because like she out-grappled Isabella de Padua like pretty easily, and I'm not sure Mandy Bohm is a better grappler than Isabella de Padua, who's known for being a grappler, right? So yeah.
Well, for some reason, it's the third last fight that we're going to be watching this Saturday, John, and I still can't fucking stand that. Anyway, let's get into something that should hopefully be a little bit more fun. We got Iwan Cutelaba going up against Devin Clark, -150 for Cutelaba, +130 for Devin Clark. Very difficult fight for me to break down here. Obviously, Cutelaba has a little bit of a Greco-Roman wrestling background that we definitely saw in full gear when he went out there and took out Khalil Roundtree. But outside of that, it's pretty much been like somber times for Iwan Cutelaba. Obviously, he goes out there, gets knocked out twice by Ankalaev. And then I believe his last fight, why can't I recall it right off the top of my head? God damn it. Who did he beat last year? Or who did he lose last year?
Oh, Cutelaba? He lost to Ankalaev.
Sorry. It was a draw. He had a draw against
Jacoby.
Yeah. He went out there. I believe he got a 10-8 in that first round on at least one judge's scorecard, and then it made it a draw. But yeah, that was a fight where he had tremendous success in that first round against Jacoby, using his wrestling, using those devastating elbows. But then after that, didn't have much success after that. Jacoby, obviously a very good striker, so he was able to maintain that distance and really let his work show. Whereas Devin Clark, I feel like a lot of his success is going to have to be getting inside on Cutelaba, whether grinding him up against the cage like he did against Alonzo Benefield, getting off his volume, or eventually dragging him to the ground. But I still end up on the side that Cutelaba will be good defensively here, at least for the first 7.5 minutes. And within that amount of time, find that knockout against Devin Clark. Devin Clark, it seems a little bit lost on the feet at times. And I feel like a guy with the explosiveness and the speed of a Cutelaba, he should be able to find that chin of Devin Clark eventually here. Not to mention, talk about that new look for my guy, Iwan Cutelaba. Looks like an absolute murderer out of the Matrix or something like that. But I'm hoping that this is a sign of things to come, that this guy could actually go out there and be a little bit of a character. But in terms of stylistically speaking for the fight itself, both guys wrestling backgrounds, I give Clark the advantage in terms of being able to go out there and have a better minute winning scenario for 15 minutes compared to Cutelaba, whose win condition will probably come within 6 or 7 minutes of this fight going down. If Clark is able to survive those first 6 to 7 minutes, I think he wins this fight. So in terms of props, obviously Cutelaba KO is what I'm leaning on most here, plus 105 on that. And then Clark by decision, I believe, is his best path to victory. There is plus 250. Either or, I don't think you can go wrong here. I'm going to go with the Cutelaba side by KO. How do you see this one going down, brother?
Oh, yeah. I mean, these are two guys who I like both of them, to be honest. Cutelaba, if I just showed you Cutelaba in round one across all his fights, you'd be like, man, that guy's fucking good. Like, he's pretty technical. He's a good defensive grappler. He's a strong offensive grappler. This guy must be really good. It's just the problem is at this point, we don't really see. I mean, when has Cutelaba ever carried cardio deep into round two, right? It's just such a reliable thing at this point. And I don't know if that's like, he did seem like against Ankalaev in his last fight, not his last fight, 2 fights ago, that he came out with a bit more of a patient game plan and wasn't going as crazy in that fight. And, I was like going into the Jacoby fight, I was like, well, maybe he'll do that here and maybe his cardio dump won't be as bad. But no, he came out, went full high energy again. It just seems to be how he fights, right? And so I think Cutelaba is very skilled, but he is not. The reality is he has terrible cardio. On the other side, you have Devin Clark, who, again, I also think is pretty underrated because Clark's a very good wrestler, and he's not a horrible striker, man. The problem with Clark, and this has always been my problem with him, is like he does not handle adversity well at all. Like when he gets cracked hard, he tends to wilt pretty quickly. I don't know if it's a chinny thing or he kind of freaks out when things start to go wrong, but it happens pretty repeatedly to him in his losses. In terms of the fight, like I do think early in this fight, I don't think Clark should have a whole lot for Cutelaba, to be honest, in the first round of this fight, just because I don't really think Clark can have extended wrestling success early because Cutelaba is an excellent defensive grappler. And on the feet, Cutelaba is going to go forward and try to hurt him. And I do think, the chances of Cutelaba finishing this in the first round are quite high, to be honest. Now, and I say quite high, I'm not saying like 50%. I think you're talking like 25, 30% range. But I do think Clark is the kind of guy who is going to fight at a pace that's going to be uncomfortable. Like can't imagine he's going to try and strike with Cutelaba much. He's going to probably try and wrestle him here. And so if he doesn't get finished early, I do sort of think Cutelaba fading is very, very in play and Clark taking over. It's like again, it's another one where I don't know if I want to bet it. It's like, do I really want to be there butthole clenched for all of round one, waiting for Cutelaba to gas out, right? With a bet on Devin Clark. I'm not really sure. I do lean him on the money line just because I think he has more ways to win the fight than Cutelaba does here. In terms of a prop, the tempting thing is to just say bet Cutelaba round one. The problem is a plus like 250 or 300, whatever it is. You're not really getting – yeah, you're not really getting a great number for a prop you need to hit in 5 minutes, right? Yeah. And so I don't really love that. I kind of like Clark inside the distance, to be honest, because the guy wins almost all the time by decision. But we have seen Cutelaba multiple times now when he's been gassed out and wrestled, just kind of give up on the mat. And that is something, that I think if Clark fights the way he needs to win this fight, he has a decent chance to take a dominant position late in the fight against Cutelaba while he's out of gas. So I think it's interesting, plus 450. I think it's probably happens at a higher clip than that. I don't really love any props, though. Like nothing really pops off the page to me. I do lean Clark, but again, it's like you're going to be fucking sweating, man, if you're betting Devin Clark here. So
just saying regarding Devin Clark's finishing capabilities, his last finish came April 2016 via hand injury. So he scared a guy so bad that he broke the guy's hand. So
I know
but
it's an out there take.
I know where you're coming from. Just
it's
being a
like
smart ass over here.
I'm trying to give a prop out here, and I'm looking
Yeah.
at it. And I'm like, would I put money on any of these?
Yeah.
You know?
I know what you mean. I feel like this fight's just a pass all in all, right? Like the
Yeah.
line is a little bit too crazy, in my opinion. I believe the value could potentially be on Clark here, as he has the better, like we said, better minute winning compared to Cutelaba, who's a little bit more confined to that
Yeah.
6 to 7 minute mark, right? All right, that was the co-main event. That brings us to our main event, and another opportunity for me to remind you guys, make sure you hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then hit my guy John over there with a follow on Twitter at MMA Fox, as you see on the screen, and then give him some support on his Club and Sub channel, where he does a show every Wednesday night, 10 p.m. with him and his crew over there. So make sure you guys go check that out. All right, main event time. Anthony Smith versus Ryan Spann. Very weird main event, but here we are, minus 170-ish for Anthony Smith, plus 150 is a return on Ryan Spann. Very difficult and weird fight to break down, right? Both of these guys kind of low output at times. Ryan Spann obviously has way more knockout power, but I don't believe he has the cardio to go out there and fight a solid 5 rounds against a heavily experienced guy like Anthony Smith. I think that Anthony Smith is durable enough to stay out of the way of the big shots that are going to be coming from Ryan Spann. And I think at a certain point, Anthony Smith should start to take over. We saw it in that third round against Sam Alvey for Ryan Spann in terms of how much his work rate diminishes and how fighters are able to find that opening, especially Sam Alvey. I mean, rocking and hurting him twice, close to even getting a draw in that fight if he was able to put on the pressure a little bit more, in my opinion. But I feel like you're going to have a much better fighter in Anthony Smith here. But it wasn't that long ago that we were like, Anthony Smith's done, right? Like when he had that 2-fight losing streak against Glover and Rakic, we're like, oh, the guy has no confidence anymore. You know, he's just giving up takedowns and not really doing much off of his back. But then he had those 2 wins against Devin Clark, the aforementioned Devin Clark, and then the weird finish over Jimmy Crute due to that weird leg injury. And now he's right back in it. But I listened to an interview he did recently. I think it was the one that he did on the MMA Hour. And he's like so honest with himself that you kind of appreciate him even more. He goes, yeah, like, of course, guys like Alexander Rakic are going to beat me and Glover Teixeira, although people are saying, you know, he's 40 years old. How could you lose to a guy like that? It's still Glover motherfucking Teixeira. You can go out there and snap your neck in half if he needs to. But he said, I should be beating guys like Devin Clark. I should be beating guys like Jimmy Crute. And I should be beating guys like Ryan Spann. And I absolutely agree with him. I categorize Ryan Spann in that range. So I think Ryan Spann is heavily tied to an early win condition here, right? Round 1 or round 2 knockout. But I think that Smith is good enough defensively that he should be able to get away from those big strikes. And then I think he should start to take over. So first and foremost, fight doesn't go to decision, minus 290. Obviously, heavy chalk there, but I feel like that's a good spot if you want to toss into a couple parlays or something. But I think that Smith eventually, starts dragging him to the ground, starts overwhelming him with a little bit more, maybe not crazy pace, but at least having the better cardio, being the fresher fighter, and seeing that he can take advantage of an exhausted fighter. So Smith inside the distance, currently sitting at plus 125, but I think we can get a little bit crazy with some of these round props as well. Smith round 3 plus 950, Smith round 4 plus 1550, and Smith round 5 plus 2350. I'd be surprised if it even gets to round 5, to be honest. Fight won't start round 5 is minus 255. So that's another spot that potentially people could look at. But yeah, I like Smith here. I think he's a better overall fighter, a good durability, should be able to stay away from those knockout blows from Ryan Spann, then start to take over later and get that late finish. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, it's kind of funny with Anthony Smith, right? Because for a while, I feel like there was this silent, unspoken about war going on between MMA Twitter and MMA betting Twitter, where everybody in MMA Twitter was like, "Oh my God, Anthony Smith's a top 5 fighter in light heavyweight," and everybody in MMA betting Twitter was like, "Anthony Smith fucking sucks. I'm trying to fade him all the time."
Right? I know what you mean, yeah.
But eventually, I've kind of come around on Smith in a way. Like, I don't think Smith was ever really a top 5 guy. I thought he was extremely overrated, but at some point, though, you have to look at the results, though. Like, the guy's a pretty good striker. He was lighting Crute up before the injury, on the feet.
Honestly, I didn't remember it going that way pre-tape. And then when I taped the fight, I'm like, oh, shit, he had way more success than I actually remembered him having.
Yeah, and I mean, he was, Gustafsson landed more against him, but, like, he was outstriking him with his hands. He was winning the boxing exchanges against Gustafsson pretty easily. Same thing with Glover, really, before, like, he kind of gassed out in that fight. And fractured his orbital. And so it's like he's a pretty good striker if he can have his way. My big concern with Anthony Smith is that, he's just very easy to take down, and he ends up in all these weird positions on the mat against good grapplers in that weird, like, turtled up position, and everybody seems to get on his back there. The thing is, like, the guys who have really fucked him up on the mat are like Glover Teixeira, John Jones. Like, Ryan Spann is not that, man. No. I do think Spann could take him down and maybe have moments of success on top. The problem is I don't think Spann's a very good submission grappler, even though he has a bunch of submissions on his record. I think he's pretty reckless in top position. Like, we just saw it in his last fight. Smith sub Devin Clark from bottom. And so I don't really think Spann is safe anywhere this fight goes, if that makes sense. Whereas I think Smith is fairly safe on the ground, even if he does get stuck on his back and drop a round or two that way. And on the feet, like, sure, Spann could KO him, but I think Smith's striking is far more reliable. Like, we've seen the guy have standing success against much better fighters than anybody Ryan Spann has fought, right? So, and then you just think about even the cardio dynamic. Like, I'm not saying Smith has elite cardio, but it's solid. Whereas Ryan Spann, the guy went life and death with Sam Alvey. Someone just mentioned in the chat, but it's like he looked like he needed to put on a respirator at the end of that fight. Yeah. And that wasn't even fought at a particularly high pace. And so when I look at this fight, I'm like, Spann either has to knock him out early or grind him out. I don't think Spann has the cardio to grind him out. I just don't. In terms of knocking him out early, yes, it could happen. Spann hits hard. But again, I think Smith's a much better striker than Spann is. And so as much as it pains me to say it, because I've always been fairly Anthony Smith, I think this is a very, very good fight for Anthony Smith, to be completely honest. Like I said, I don't think Spann's safe anywhere. I think Smith has the striking pretty easily. I think he's got a big cardio edge here. I like him on the money line a bit. But even more where I really like him is, even money to finish. Spann making the final bell would surprise me, to be completely honest. Like, you look at, and Spann finishing Smith, to be honest, would surprise me a bit. You look at the guys who have finished Smith in recent years since he fought a light heavyweight. It's Glover, and has anybody else?
Jones finished him at light heavyweight, but his last middleweight fight, he did get finished by Thiago Santos with the body kick and punches.
Thiago Santos, also at light heavyweight.
That was middleweight, actually.
Yeah, but I'm saying now he's at light heavy.
Oh, yeah, correct. You're right. Yeah, sorry.
But I just don't think Smith gets finished at a very high clip here, and I don't think Spann has what it takes to win this fight down the stretch. We've seen it a lot. Smith's come from behind victories, and he may fall behind early here. I actually don't think a live bet on Anthony Smith is really crazy in this spot, because there is a chance, Spann could panic wrestle and just hold him down. He did it with Johnny Walker and got finished in that position, but he may panic wrestle and just hold Smith down for 2 rounds. But like I said, I don't think he can keep the pace up. So I think Smith inside the distance at even money is pretty good. I think Smith on the money line is pretty good, though I do think there's a chance for a better live opportunity here. But yeah, I mean, Team Anthony Smith this week, I guess. Go Lionheart. It's a weird place to be, but here we are.
You know what? I was one of those guys as well that wasn't really high on Anthony Smith, but I did end up paying for it when I did back Volkan Oezdemir against him. I thought that fight, I'm like, okay, that's the fight where he kind of like won me over, right? That's where I'm like, okay, I can't believe he actually survived that, and then finished him after that as well. And that was the fight that ultimately earned him the title shot, right?
I pretty much faded him on his entire ride up. Shogun.
Are you kidding me? Really?
Like, he was a bonfire of cash for me. Gustafson, I parlayed up against him.
Oh my god. I believe I faded him with Glover Teixeira. That's the one.
Yeah,
that
I did too.
Cashing, I think. But I think it was right place, right time for Anthony Smith. Right after he moved up from middleweight. After that, Thiago Santos lost, gets the ghost of Rashad Evans, finishes him in 53 seconds. Gets the ghost of Mauricio Shogun Huam after that, finishes him in a minute and a half. Volkan Oezdemir, good win, solid, respectable win. Finishes him in the 3rd round, and then gets the title shot. So like perfect time and place.
Yeah,
like that, right.
No,
same with Thiago Santos too. He had kind of the same thing where he had a tumultuous run of middleweight, goes up, gets perfect matchups, and gets a fucking title shot.
And that happens from time to time. Johnny Walker almost managed to get a perfect run and get a title shot. I don't think he's ever going to sniff it, right? It's wild.
Yeah, light heavyweight is a circus in its own right. All right, let's get to the 3 best bets here, and then we'll sign off. But first and foremost, like I always do, I do want to announce the cast that I have for the Ultimate Wayne show tomorrow night, and I'm going solo with my guy Santino DeFranco former UFC fighter, or actually tough competitor, tough season 9 way back in the day. Ended up retiring from fighting. Now is one of the head coaches over there at Fight Ready. If you guys remember watching the Eddie Shaw episode I did a couple weeks ago, he goes, "You got to get Santino on. You got to get him on. He likes talking fights. He likes talking bets and predictions and stuff." So I was able to get that contact. He's going to be coming on. And to my surprise, I actually kind of stalked him a little bit. He has his own YouTube channel where he does bets every now and then and drops some prediction videos of his own. So make sure you guys go give him a follow as well. I believe it's Santino DeFranco. Pretty much just type that into YouTube and you should be able to find his page. So make sure you guys go check that out. And then obviously he drops some pretty cool behind the scenes training footage as well. I believe he just recently dropped one with Wiley Zhang finally coming into town, getting ready for her fight with Rose Namajunas. Last thing I'll say about Santino before we move on to the best bets, he is cornering Haile Alateng this weekend. So I'm interested to hear what his thoughts are for that fight, as well as his thoughts on Gustavo Lopez. Obviously, he's going to be picking Haile to win that fight, but I'm still interested to hear how he thinks he's going to get it done there. All right, let's get to the best prop bets for this weekend. And I've finally gotten to the point where I'm like, it's me, it's John, and Cody whenever I'm able to get his picks. And I have all 3 picks this time around from all these guys. But I wanted to always give you guys picks that they're not picking, right? Just so we can have some more diversity. Today, though, fuck you guys. Some of our bets are going to be the same because there aren't that many props that I really like on this. But the ones that I do like, I really like. And both John and Cody said or picked a couple of these props as well. So fuck you guys. That's all I'm going to say. All right, first and foremost, Jackson and Bays. Fight doesn't go to decision minus 200. I really like that spot. I think we are going to see a finish in there. I think it's more so going to come from the Jackson side. So sure, you can go out there and bet Jackson inside the distance if you want at minus 140. But I would rather eat that little extra bit of chalk just in case Bays goes out there and pulls off a submission or a Hail Mary knockout of his own. But minus 200, I think that's a great line here. Secondly, I actually like Gravely and Maness under 2.5 plus 155. Like I said, I think both guys have finishing capabilities here. Maness, club and sub situations, or even just club and knock you the fuck out. And then Gravely, obviously, on the ground. I think he's going to be able to pass that guard of Maness, get to dominant positions, just like Munoz was able to. And I think he should be able to find that finish quickly thereafter. Again, like I said, I think Maness got saved by the bell at the end of that first round against Munoz, and then Munoz struggled to get him back into that position in the second round. Luckily, Gravely has much more reliable takedowns, and he should be able to get back right back there if he goes into the second round and then find that finish. Plus 155, like I said, I like that it covers both angles here. And then lastly, I like Arman Tsarukyan inside the distance. Plus 170, I think he goes out there and absolutely demolishes Christos Giagos. Maybe it takes a round or so to start to build that pace and start to break Giagos, but I do think that finish will come shortly thereafter. So yeah, Tsarukyan inside the distance plus 170. John, you're up, my brother.
Take it away. Let's go. First up, we got Mike Rodriguez via decision against Stefan Nchukwi. It's plus 230. Yeah, I think it's a great buy down spot on Rodriguez here. Personally, I just don't think Stefan is really ready for this spot. I think Rodriguez is the better striker. I think he's going to be better in the clinch. And I think, he shouldn't have too many issues getting up if Stefan does go the grappling game plan here. The thing is, the reason I like decision, it's a light heavyweight fight, so the natural inclination is to think finish. But Stefan's shown to be very, very durable. Rod doesn't box a whole lot, and so I don't necessarily think he's going to be landing a ton of head strikes. So, yeah, I favor him to win minutes pretty easily here, and I don't think it's very likely he finishes Stefan. So I think the decision is a very good spot. Yeah, second up, we got Jackson Bays. Fight doesn't go to decision. Minus 200. Look, it sounds obvious, but sometimes these spots are obvious, right? JP Bays has shown me nothing to make me think he can go a hard 15 with somebody on Montel Jackson's level. I have some issues with Jackson's game, but if Bays doesn't take him out early in this fight, I kind of think it's kind of inevitable before Bays gets finished. On the other side of things, for Bays to win the fight, I likely think it's very much focused on him getting a takedown and finishing the fight in top position. Very hard for me to see him having the cardio to go 15 here. I think this finishes at a super high clip. And yeah, last up, I am on the other side here with Gravely. I got Gravely by decision plus 150. I do think Maness is okay enough on his back to survive, and I think Gravely most likely, if he's intelligent, is going to try to lock down position and hold him down here. In terms of the fight itself, I don't really think Maness has a ton for Gravely. I think he's a much better grappler than anything Maness has seen, and is going to get taken down pretty much at will. I placed Gravely at about 70% myself, and I think decision's about 50%.
All right, there we go. So we are kind of in conflict with one of those, but I think you'll be pleasantly surprised to see what Cody has as well. So let's go over Cody's 3 prop bets quickly. First, Gravely by decision plus 160 or plus 150 is his first one that he likes up there. Secondly, he likes Tsarukyan inside the distance, so we agree there at plus 170. And then lastly, he likes Mandy Bohm by decision at plus 175. That one kind of surprised me when I saw it, but again, because he's not on the show, he's not able to express his reasoning as to why. But if you guys do obviously want to hear his reason, go check out his podcast with Paul Shaughnessy. I believe it's Dog or Pass podcast. More than likely, if you guys are watching my show, you guys have already seen that as well. But Cody will be back on the show next week. We do have a pay-per-view next week. My ass will be out in Vegas once again. Very much looking forward to that. I'm going to be going out to 266. So I'll be doing the Thursday and Friday show from Vegas. I promise I'll have better audio quality this time around compared to last time. I know a lot of people are shitting on me for that, but now that I know what I'm dealing with when I go out there, I'll definitely be more prepared for that. So, yeah, John, you got anything to say on the back end here? What's going on, brother?
Yeah, not a whole lot. I'm really pumped this weekend. I'm super pumped for next weekend. Guys, if you want to watch my show, our YouTube channel is in the description below. It's the Club and Sub podcast. We're live every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. It's 3 to 4 of us every week. It's a good time. Check it out.
There you go. That's all the plug you need, because trust me, you guys are really going to enjoy the Club and Sub podcast. I used to listen to it like usually when it drops, but now that I have John on the show, I kind of want to be surprised with some of his takes. So I don't listen to it until after we do the show. Yeah, those are definitely guys I like to lean on with some good wisdom as well. So make sure you guys go check out the Club and Sub podcast. All right, that's the wrap on the show. We managed to get 14 fights done in under 2 hours, so I'm happy to do that. That's always a good thing. Yeah, John will be back on the show for the October 2nd. Nope. Not October. Yes, October 2nd card.
Great betting card.
Sorry?
Great betting card.
There we go. So you guys should get some nice hot takes from my guy, John, for I believe he'll be returning on the October 30th edition, or sorry, September 30th edition of this show. Yeah, that's a wrap. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Make sure you guys hit that like, hit that subscribe, and then obviously go subscribe to the Club and Sub podcast as well. Good luck on your bets this weekend. War Rodriguez by decision for John for some reason, but for real, Montel Jackson, go out there and get that fight. Doesn't go to decision real quick for us. All right, see you guys next week.
Take it easy. Peace.